Our next speaker is Mr. Bevel Wooding from CaribNOG.
Afternoon, everyone. I'm not Mr. Bevel Wooding, but I know that the program says I'm Stephen Lee. Mr. Bevel Wooding will be speaking after for the CTU. Right, so I think we heard a little bit about CaribNOG this morning, so just want to go into a little bit more detail and kind of give some background and and get you give you some insight into just the purposes of Network Operators Group and CaribNOG in particular. So let me start here. Let me start here by asking if anyone knows what this is. Anyone at all? Open question. There's no prize, I'm sorry. Any guesses? Yeah. Appears to be a diagram for a wide area network. Yes, that's correct. There's looking for a more narrow, specific wide area network that we're talking about. Random guess. What could this be? Starts with an I. Internet. Thank you. Yes, this is actually the initial part of the what is called the ARPANET project, which is what is today the internet, right? This is 4 computers, the first 4 devices that were connected up to provide to create this network, and they were operated by UCLA, California, Stanford Research Institute, University of California, again in Santa Barbara, and University of Utah Computer Department. So this is just an introduction to say if you have 4 computers, you can start the internet. I'm kind of kidding, but I'm not kidding. Because we did start with 4 computers, and what we have today are millions and millions of devices and the Internet of Things, which will carry this into billions as we go forward. But it starts like this. And we want to just kind of set our minds, put our minds in a particular tone or set of expectations this week, that it doesn't matter that this is 2017 and that we're in Guyana. There are things which start like this that become global, and this happens every single day, right? So this is the ARPANET project, which was by the Defense Department in the U.S., and it started by these. And essentially, what they were doing with those 4 computers is that they wanted researchers and persons who were collaborating together on various technical things to basically talk to each other and collaborate with each other, share information. The first 2 letters that were sent from, I think it was this UCLA computer to the Santa Barbara computer was LO, because they were starting to type login, LO, and then the system crashed. And then right after that, they got it back up running, and then they were able to do LOGIN. And so it starts step by step. But these were just researchers who wanted to talk to each other. And essentially what we have, and the statement we're making here, a lot of things that we take for granted were actually refined just through collaboration and people working together and people sharing knowledge, right? And I'm pointing this out because that's what Network Operators Group does. CaribNOG is like any other network operators group across the world. And what those do is that they provide a forum for persons who run networks, like those persons in the department connecting those 4 computers, to talk to each other, share ideas. Hey, I have a thought about doing this. Do you think I could send that to you? Do you think we could string some wires and connect these 2 people together? That's what the Network Operators Group do. And so it's a forum for that kind of development. And as we know, that kind of development has led to the internet. So specifically, NOGs share resource and knowledge. They facilitate work done by each other. I have this resource, I'm going to lend it to you. You have that resource, you can lend it to me. They facilitate skill development. problem solving, and problem solving. And these are, CaribNOG, as I said, is similar to NOGs around the world. And these are some of the other, relationship building would be the last one. These are some of the NOGs that exist currently. And some of them you might know. LACNOG operates in the Latin America region, South America region. NANOG operates in the United States and Canada region. CaribNOG is what we have here. But as you see, this is just one of many NOGs. And the whole internet infrastructure, Facebook, Google, Twitter, all of those things are largely built by engineers and technical operators who go to these NOG meetings or participate in NOG fora, discussions online, meet and greet, and so on, and they talk to each other. They actually work things out together. Facebook wants to do something that requires high-speed networking, and so they talk to guys at Google Fiber and say, if I start to push out 5 terabits of data out of this data center, can you handle it? No, we have to increase the capacity of our light transmission. So let's go talk to these guys who make silicon, and they talk, and they work out standards. And it goes hand in hand with what Shernon described earlier about the IETF. IETF spends a lot of time writing standards and developing protocols. NOG spend a lot of time operationalizing them and creating products out of them and so on. And so we see that NOGs are important for the development of these networks. And what we want to do inside of CaribNOG is have the same kind of vibrancy and creative development that we see coming out of these NOGs to be taking place. And it is actually happening. Last week I was at a NANOG meeting, and there were sessions like this in the rooms, and people were giving presentations. They were talking about 100 gigabit fiber and so on, and they're giving presentations on that, not based on, hey, this is what I've done, but based on, this is what I'm thinking about, this is what I'm trying to develop. I'm looking for community feedback on what do you think about these ideas. And then they leave the meeting rooms and they go outside and they talk. And they have drinks, and in our case, we'll have pepper pot and roti and all that kind of thing, but they talk and they hammer out how to make some of these things happen, right? So I want to place it in your minds that NOGs are extremely important if we're going to develop infrastructure, and we're going to do what our minister spoke about this morning, which is get into the back end of what makes the internet work. This is what it's about, right? So that's just to give you the world of NOGs. Speaking specifically about CaribNOG, if you look at this, this is the map of our Caribbean region, spanning far and wide, Guyana, Suriname, all the way up, Bahamas. And as you see, we have quite an area to cover, right? Not necessarily a super large geographical area, but we have this water that just, does pose a little bit of a problem for moving around easily. So inside of the Caribbean region, we have some challenges. Our communities, population sizes tend to be small, right? There's a high cost of travel. And I mean, you have your own version of this in Guyana, moving people from Georgetown into the hinterlands, moving around and so on. It's not trivial, right? You don't just up and go from one place to the next and arrive in half an hour, as some places do. And our technical communities tend to be small and more at the starting points. At the same time, we have a few things in our favor. We have a lot of creative people inside of the region, high levels of interest in technology and using technologies, and we have a lot of support from international organizations like the ones who are here this week, LACNIC and ICANN and ISOC and ARIN and the CTU and CaribNOG. All of these are institutions which have chosen to collaborate together to see that we develop in the region. And CaribNOG being here as part of Internet Week Guyana is part of that. All the institutions are here because we're not satisfied with having developments in the United States and in Canada and in Europe, or just in Trinidad and Jamaica and so on. We want every single part of the Caribbean to have very deep penetration of people who are sharing knowledge and collaborating. And we're very serious about that. I mean, we have had meetings all over the Caribbean since 2007, and we'll continue to do so until we have a really strong technical community. So CaribNOG's response, to all this is to strengthen our organizations and our communities and want to foster development and integration. There are some specific things that we're doing. We bring together professionals, and we always want, I know this week we'll have students out, we'll have entrepreneurs out. We always want to have people across the full range. We're talking about from students all the way to people who are starting small businesses, to people who work in banks and law offices, people at universities. We definitely want our telecom operators, wireless operators. The full range is what's necessary. We also want regulators. I want people from the government. Everybody, because everybody has to be a part of this solution. If we're talking about something, let's say data centers, it's really great to have data centers. Data centers are what makes it possible to have a lot of server capacity and websites and so on. But data centers don't just come out of thin air, right? They have to be constructed. You have to have your civil engineering works. You probably want the government to play a part in it by having concessions or lowering taxes and so on to incentivize people to go out and start a data center. You probably want somebody who is a really good businessman and entrepreneur who doesn't care about technology, but he can run a really good data center to just stand it up and offer services to somebody else who has a technical capacity. It takes all of these kind of actors to make these things happen. It doesn't just happen overnight. And those are some of the things that we want to at least spark the discussions and have some conversations which are leading to somewhere in a forum like CaribNOG, because if everybody collaborates, then we actually get there at the end of the day. Right? So ultimately we want to positively impact our region. The CaribNOG team is extremely serious about this. We have lots of people who are in school, universities, doing really good work. Some of them go overseas to do really great things. We also want to have a really strong capacity inside of the region to develop our own infrastructure and offer services out to the world. All right, so I'm just going to go through the rest of this quickly. We'll have the slides available afterwards. CaribNOG does this through partnerships, through promotion, through leadership development. We want young people to come in and interact with some of the older members and start to understand how things are done. Networking, the straight training and community empowerment. These are different ways in which we systematically go about this. All right, the emphases. When CaribNOG started or in our earlier meetings, we'll be talking a lot about voice over IP, some of this setting up firewalls and so on. Over time, that has changed as the internet has moved. And our current emphases are on internet infrastructure. That's building, establishing internet exchange points, establishing fiber capacity, and so on. Cybersecurity, because this is a perennial issue across the globe. I want to make sure that our networks and our communities are safe. Cloud services, because that is how computing capacity and networking capacity is being delivered primarily today. Gone are the days in which the architecture for delivering services is, well, let me stand up a server in my server room here. People are moving much more to scale in cloud and multiple servers working together. So that's something that we want to understand. Mobile services, because whereas a lot of, let's say, networking in the United States and Canada and Europe and so on, they can leverage a lot of terrestrial connectivity with fiber and so on. We have hills, we have mountains, we have the sea in between. We have to do a lot more mobile just for basic connectivity in a lot of places that we go. It's not convenient to run hard lines everywhere. So mobile services is big, as well as just the fact that more and more data and more communication is taking place on mobile platforms as we go forward. And then last but not least, network resiliency. As we saw with the recent hurricanes inside the region, huge swaths of our infrastructure can get taken out by natural disasters. And this is one of the things on the CaribNOG agenda now. How do we create much more resilient networks? Not just in terms of, not to lose a radio tower, but things like incorporating clean energy, solar power, and so on, so that we can get back up and running after disasters when you might have other forms of energy being cut off. So those are our priorities, which we'll push into next year. Participating in CaribNOG. Somebody asked me earlier today, how can I get connected up to CaribNOG? It's not an organization in which you have to go and fill out a 10-page form and pay a membership fee. That's not how CaribNOG works. That's not how most NOGs work. It's by participation. Once you say, I am willing to be a part of this community and I'm willing to contribute back to the community, you're immediately a part of CaribNOG. And you can come to the meetings, or you can communicate with us online or on social media. The CaribNOG website, that's caribnog.org, will tend to have all of the information there about the various things that are going on. Jump off onto the Facebook page, onto Twitter, get access to the mailing list from there. Or you can write us directly. But basically, it's a volunteer-based organization, and we have an administrative system behind the scenes. But essentially, you're going to be interfacing with engineers like myself, or just interested stakeholders like myself and the rest of the team that's here this week. And everyone is there willing to answer questions. And it's not only persons who are from the region. We have lots of really great participation from persons outside of our region, persons based in South America, North America, Europe, who are a part of CaribNOG, participate on our lists, answer questions, and generally move the discussion forward. Right? So I really welcome everybody to be a part of this so that we can build together. All right? Thank you.
Thank you to Mr. Stephen Lee for sharing that informative presentation about some of the important work being done by CaribNOG, the Caribbean Network Operators Group. And in a demonstration of Mr. Daniel's presentation, where he spoke about the various roles being held by persons in the Caribbean, I'll now welcome Mr. Bevel Wooding, who also represents CTU. Please welcome him to the stage. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am doing multiple duties. I'm supposed to do the CaribNOG presentation. I'm one of the founders of CaribNOG. I was supposed to tell you a bit about the ARIN, that is the American Registry for Internet Numbers. I represent ARIN in the Caribbean. And one of the other hats I wear is at the CTU, where I'm a special advisor to the Secretary General of the CTU. And so she asked in her absence that I do that presentation. And that's what you'll be getting this afternoon. And as I pull up the presentation, I just wanted to point out that the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, the Secretariat is headquartered in Trinidad and Tobago, but the union itself really represents all of its constituent member states. So in this presentation, I will be describing to you the work of the CTU and how it relates to even what we're doing here right now. A lot of the participation and involvement of some of the internet organizations that you're seeing present was as a result of the outreach of the CTU. So we're going to take a look at what is the CTU, what does it do, how does that relate to what we're doing here this week, and more importantly, how does that relate to what we have to continue to do beyond this week in advancing and developing the digital and internet economy here in Guyana. So who is the CTU? I'll give you this overview first, and then we'll go into some of the details. One, it is the primary facilitator for formulation of Caribbean information and communications technology policy and best practices. It is an intergovernmental organization set up to look specifically at how the region takes advantage of information and communications technology. It is the preferred source of ICT advice for regional governments. It is the go-to institution for input, counsel, direction, and policy as it relates to technology matters and telecommunications matters in the Caribbean. Thirdly, it is the leading coordinator for Caribbean or region-wide ICT projects. And recently, a number of governments have also been calling upon the CTU to help with national ICT planning as well. It is a major contributor to the development of ICT capacity within the region. Stephen may have mentioned this, but the CTU was one of the first organizations to support CaribNOG, its formation, and helped with the development of the CaribNOG community over the years. And then it is the designated advocate for Caribbean ICT positions at international fora. So that in a nutshell is what the CTU is. I wanted to give you a sense of the timeline so you can see how long it has been in the business of telecommunications. When it started in 1989, ICT, information and communication technology, the internet weren't things, right? So the focus of the organization was in telecommunications, telephones, interconnection agreements and the like. But as things evolved, that focus had to shift because then there was this merge between, or this convergence between telecommunications as an independent sector and communications, how we were using things like the internet, email, policies related to the growing relevance of these networked platforms in the region. And so in 2003, the CTU, like many other organizations, like it across the world, changed its focus to specifically deal with information and communication technologies, or as many of you may have heard, the acronym ICT. Then in 2004, again, as a result of this evolution in the Caribbean landscape, the governments weren't the only ones who could reasonably contribute toward technology-related development in the region. You had the private sector making huge investments, often without any discussion with or regard for what government plans were as it related to telecommunications sector or wider development planning. And so the CTU felt in 2004 that the time was right to open its doors to having the voice of the private sector in some of the meetings. So you had these two formerly separate constituents, government on one side talking about public policy and telecommunications, and the private sector looking to see how it could leverage the technology for its own interests, for-profit interests largely, and a regional forum created for these two groups to speak. In 2005, the CTU established the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum. Actually, this was the first internet governance forum to be created in the world. The year after that, the International Internet Governance Forum was established. So the Caribbean actually got first to the pole as far as IGFs, which is a term that you'll be hearing from Shun and Osepa, are concerned. And then in 2006, the Caribbean Center for Excellence, 2009, the Caribbean ICT Roadshow, one of the first region-wide efforts to bring about public awareness of what technology is about. You had people trying to do better with the internet, but not knowing exactly how and not knowing what kept back internet developments. And of course, I'm sure it's no different here in Guyana as anywhere else in the region. Everybody wanted cheaper, faster, better internet. Right? Anybody here does not want cheaper, faster, better internet? The whole room doesn't want. Okay, well, then maybe I could stop my presentation right here. But for those who do, what the roadshow did was it started to point out what you could do with broadband, because what we discovered was that there were people saying we need more internet and we need to move to broadband, but you had a public that was largely unaware of what broadband is and what you can do with it. I have had meetings where persons were saying the way the internet works is that you log on to it, you go and get coffee, you fry or boil an egg, and then you come back and the page should be loaded by then. And people actually thought that's how the internet worked, not realizing that that's how their service provider delivered the internet to them. And we found ourselves going across the region explaining that there is a better internet and it could be brought to any community, anywhere, if people knew what to ask for. Of course, not every provider, not every telecom provider or ISP was happy with this new message of liberate the people and remove the blindness and increase the levels of understanding. But we felt it was a necessary part of the movement toward a more aware Caribbean society. And that is what the roadshow sought to do. It sought to bring awareness as to what you can do with the technology generally, but what you can do with the internet specifically. Like, how do you use broadband? And once you taste it, how do you advocate for more of it so that more communities and more people and more groups could leverage, touch, realize, and experience the power of the internet? That roadshow ran for 4 years, I think it was, touched 15 Caribbean countries, exposed young persons to the internet for the first time, gave entrepreneurs a chance to understand how they could pursue new kinds of web-based developments. But it also brought attention to some of the things that consumers don't know to ask for, and that is what is happening on the infrastructure side. What stops us from getting that faster internet or that cheaper internet? Issues like an internet exchange point, a little-known, unsexy term that describes a fundamental piece of how the internet works that the region didn't have, and that many countries in the region, Ghana included, still don't have. And so we were trying to make this connection between the internet that you want to have and the steps that you need to take to get there. And I'm raising this point in particular because we think the time is right to bring the roadshow to Guyana and do that same level of public awareness and that same level of confrontation with those who have the ability to create a better space for consumers who, for different reasons, for profit, who enjoys margins. Oh, let me say this in case you don't know, actually. There's a lot of money to be made on the back of public ignorance. It'll sink into you just now. But those companies that are aware of it would like to keep the consumer public as ignorant as possible for as long as possible to make the money. And we are saying enough is enough. Enough is enough. There comes a time when we have to ask for that which we deserve. And the basic reality is we deserve that faster, better, cheaper internet. And we deserve opportunities that we're seeing in other countries and other parts of the world that we have been struggling to realize right here at home. And so a big part of what we felt, and I want you to understand how this fits into even this week. This week is a precursor for that extended, sustained attention being paid to how do you exactly go about building the digital economy. Many countries have tried to do it piecemeal. We do the parts that are easy, but we leave the parts that are difficult. And what we have found is that you have to take it as one holistic approach. And so with the roadshow and with the plans that we have for 2018 to refashion and reframe the roadshow, a lot of what we were dealing with back in 2009 is moot, right? Even if you didn't know then that there was something called a faster, better internet, thank you Facebook, thank you YouTube, thank you internet connectivity, slow though it may be, we understand that there's a world out there that is doing things with the internet that we're still struggling to do, yeah? And so big part of what we want to do is to push that envelope of what we should be doing right here. And that's what the roadshow, the rebooted roadshow will be in 2018. And then 2014, the CTU started the single ICT space. Again, think of this as a wonderful, enchanting melody waiting on lyrics from the local content development groups, right? The single ICT space, in a nutshell, says that the region should have one set of applications and one set of services and no roaming for data, no barriers with the movement of electronic goods and services across the region. But the reality says something different. So as a concept, it is wonderful and it is a good thing to declare, but there are some practical steps that you and I have to take to make that dream a reality. And that too is the work that lies before us. So the vision for the CTU, ICT-enabled development in a seamless Caribbean. Mission to create an environment in partnership with members to optimize returns from ICT resources. A lot of the language that you would hear many governments and many institutions using. But for the CTU, the plan is to make sure that we can translate that language into things that are practical. So the way we go about this mandate, harmonized policy formulation, making sure that if you're trying to do business from Guyana with the rest of the Caribbean, you're not going to encounter obstructionist type policies in other parts of the region, or you're not going to create or unwittingly allow to exist barriers that allow for movement in and out. Capacity development, that's training, workshops, education and development, representation at international fora, and being an industry watch. The governance structure for the CTU is fairly straightforward. There's a general conference of ministers, and these will be the people who, ministers of government who are responsible for technology or information and communications technology. They take briefings from the Executive Council, permanent secretaries and technical officers who represent the various territories, and then the Secretariat, where the Secretary General and her staff execute the decisions of the General Conference. These are the member states, everybody. Activities include policy formulation and projects such as the Spectrum Management Project, the Caribbean ICT Policy Rapid Response Initiative, the Single ICT Space Roadmap, the Caribbean Regional Communications Infrastructure Program, and one nice long one called HIPCA, which was supposed to have brought about a harmonization of policy. And I say supposed to have brought about because here's what happens, and I have to be open and transparent with you. The groups meet and talk about what the policies should be, and they come up with some wonderful model policies, but these policies happen in a policy vacuum, and there is no corresponding cry from the stakeholders that we all serve to say, what's the timeline between that wonderful model policy and how it hits my country, my community? And so HIPCA and some of the other projects, the Spectrum Management Project, where the policy needs to be translated into how does it impact legislation in Ghana depends on your awareness that a policy was drafted that ought to be implemented here at home, that you ought to be crying out for. And that's a big part of what we want to do as well with the new roadshow, bring awareness to some of these opportunities that are being untapped and unserved. Activities include the roadshow, I spoke about that, Industry Watch spoke about that. Representation at international fora. The CTU represents its members. A lot of the meetings a lot of the organizations that presented before me, ICANN, ISOC, LACNIC, as you know, will have their meetings in various parts of the region or various parts of the world. It's not always possible to get every possible Caribbean country represented at these meetings by direct travel or by even remote. So the CTU would send its officers there and represent the region where there is no sufficient representation. And these are some of the fora that we participate in. And these are some of the projects that I mentioned. Single ICT Space, Roadshow, CARSIP, Internet Governance, the Spectrum, and so on. The focus this week for the CTU at the Guyana Internet Week is going to be on the general roadshow theme of harnessing the power of ICT-enabled development. So on Friday, we're going to have a day dedicated to looking at the power is in your hands. Are you getting the most out of your mobile device? Are you asking your mobile service provider for services that are befitting the amount of money people are paying now for the devices that are in their pockets and purses? In other words, you have a smartphone. Are you using it smartly? Right? Local content and digital economy. Ghana is actually at the forefront in the region in terms of its current emphasis on mobile app creation and digital content creation, and that's a good thing that we want to use as a model across other parts of the region. So we're going to be looking at the issue of digital skills, and then the youth and ICT, looking at cyber safety. Some kids know how to use the internet, not all know how to use it in a way that is safe, smart, or secure. And so we want to take a look at that as well on Friday. So that's our contribution to Guyana Internet Week. The hope is that you will see and hear and experience a lot more from the CTU in the coming months. We've been working very closely with the government of Guyana to tailor the program, and we're hoping that somewhere within Q1, Q2 of 2018, we can have a full-fledged week-long Caribbean ICT Roadshow right here in Guyana. Thank you very much.